So can you guess what day it is? I'll tell you what day it is. It's carburetor day. Yep, little Ford 1100, tiny little carburetor, single barrel. They fit it on the 140s, the 170s, and the 200s. Biggest difference is your Venturi in the center are 3 different sizes. Other than that, they're identically the same. I'm sorry, they're almost identically the same. I'm not sure if there's other differences. We're pulling this one off, we're going to rebuild it. When we had this running, fuel was pouring out of the accelerator pump on the side, you can barely see, and then everything else is just leaking all over the place. They had old fuel in it. She doesn't run great. The carburetor I have in the 64 runs just like a champ. So between it leaking, having old fuel in her, and all that, we're going to take it, clean it apart, and rebuild it. So stay tuned for fun with carburetors. So there she is, Ford 1100. That's where the fuel goes in. Got a little vacuum port right here. That's for your distributor. And that one is, I forgot what it's called, but it actually controls the vacuum between manifold and Venturi to control the ignition at the distributor. It's a new concept for me, but it's a very old concept. That's where one of the studs went in. And on the other side, that's the hole where the other stud went in. I'm going to take it apart, clean it all up, seal it all up. Big thing to know on this one is when I rebuild carburetors, even though this van sat for a while, I don't know how it's adjusted out. I'm going to mark out all the adjustments. I'm going to put everything exactly what it was once I clean it up, and then determine if anything needs to be adjusted. I have no history of it. Most of the time when I do that, it tends to work out alright. When it doesn't, well, then we go to plan B and start going through the manual and adjusting it. So hang tight, we're going to tear it apart, clean it up, put it back together, and get the van running, see if this will help clean it up a lot. A couple of things to notice on here, not the fact that I'm on my dog food container, there's no dog food, no animals were hurt in the making of this. It's your accelerator pump. You can see all the fuel on there, it was just pissing out. The top gasket as well, sorry I'm not paying attention to the screen. Top gasket had some leakage in there, some dust and stuff I'm not so worried about. It's your idle mixture screw. We're going to run that in, count the turns, adjust it the same way. We're going to undo this linkage. I try to keep everything as whole as I can. Makes going back together easier. And again, it holds the adjustments, making the assumption, big word assumption, that everything has been adjusted. It's just dirty. This thing sat for a while with some really old fuel in there. They tend to gum up. You get a bunch of tiny little ports. Let me cleaning it up with a wire brush. I got some carb dip. Another handy thing to have is Q-tips, and if you've got a little welding gauge, I'll see if I can find one and show you a picture of it. It's a welder's file in a sense, and they got little tiny little files, I guess, that are small enough to go into all the small parts of the carb. I use Brake Clean. I'm not no particular brand, with the straw. I'll use that to help degum stuff as well. I spray that into those little tiny ports. If you miss one of those ports, you'll create problems, and if you're not sure what's going on, you will definitely chase your tail. Generally, there's 3 parts to cleaning the carburetor: the pre-clean, the clean, and the post-clean. Pre-clean, I pull everything apart, get all the grease and all the big stuff I could scrape off easily without doing damage, and then I soak it. Soaking it is the second one. It dissolves most of the stuff in the hard to reach places. The third one is where I get my can of brake clean, my little files, my little picks, all that other stuff, and clean all the little details, making sure everything has been removed before I put it together. So clean it to clean it, I clean it, and then I clean it after I cleaned it, cleaning up all the stuff that was missed and removing all the chemicals from the cleaner. So hang tight. I might film this, but we'll find out. This is the manual I'm using, plus the carb kit that I get will also have instructions. I got this one on eBay or Amazon for like 20 bucks. This is a used one, 20 to 70 bucks ish. Talks about the carbs a little bit. I'm not going to go into this as far as the book so much. but it will describe your circuits and flows, name all your parts and how it works. That's kind of what I'm after right now, is your exploded diagram. That gives me an idea of what I'm getting into. Biggest thing is springs, check balls, stuff like that. You want to know where they are. So get a book, get a manual. It's going to help you out in the long run. Alright, let's get down to work. Hands brake clean. Again, I've got myself a gallon of carburetor dip. Berryman's makes a good one. This was a Napa one. I haven't used the Napa one, I don't think, but it's been a while since I've done a carburetor. First I'm going to remove all my linkage, my external stuff, then I'm going to tear it apart. One of the reasons I chose this container is it's got a big lip, so if anything, fluids or parts fall, they'll stay contained in there. That saves you a lot of time and grief in the long run. Little tiny things like this little horseshoe clip for the linkage. That comes off, and then that separates off at the top. Other thing, take pictures when you're doing this. I'm looking at my screen right now. Make sure I've got a view of this, because I'm going to pull this whole thing off right here, which is one clip. You always want to make sure they go in the right place. If not, you will just beat yourself up trying to find out where things went. Screwdrivers and picks are great for these little things. Magnets. This is what my choke linkage was on. Little wavy washer. It's a type of spring, actually. I'm not going to worry about this piece right now. I'm probably just going to keep it on there, honestly. Accelerator pump. Placing it apart, especially on this old stuff. Getting to find these things is more and more difficult. Alright. I'm going to clean up my shop. I've been waiting to build one on the side of my garage, one in the backyard. With everything else in the world going on right now, it's not the biggest priority because I can still work. But I definitely need more space. It's bad on those things, and they get kind of sloppy. And this one actually was fine. When I went to drive it the other day, you know, it went into different gears fine. I had reverse and first, and then I couldn't get it into third. There was something binding up in there. It just seemed to be misadjusted. Accelerator pump cover. This is your accelerator pump diaphragm. Don't be afraid when sometimes these parts stick. They've been in there for a while. Careful to pry because you don't want to scratch any surfaces. That's your old accelerator pump. He's got a little tear in him right there. But also the gasket was leaking. It's going to be junk. Spring is important. Make sure that's in good shape. So when I was driving the van, I had to skip over a second. I went to change the fluid, figuring either I've got a bad synchro in there, and we'll get into that later on when I jack up the transmissions. That's a funny thing. But anyways, not having second, I pulled it in, went to change the gear oil, pulled the drain plug, and there was maybe 2 ounces, 3 ounces of oil in there. Put new fluid in there this morning. It's just a drain and fill, real simple, no big deal for a video on that one. And then I went to run it. I think the fuel pump died because I'm not watching that clear line suck up fuel. At that point I realized, you know, I might as well do the carburetor anyways because it's giving me some issues. Once I get it running a little bit better, more sound, the heater core's leaking, so I'm just going to bypass that for now. Side note, I'm going to keep the bolts separated. I've got my accelerator pump assembly right here. The top of the carburetor bolts are going to go right there. Again, old stuff, I'm fascinated with old technology, old carburetors and points and all that. They took the impossible and somehow mechanically made it run. That's how I got into mechanics. I like learning how to manipulate things and make them go faster and stuff, but now that everybody's got these super blown charged nitromethane vehicles that go 300 miles in a quarter second, or a quarter mile, you know, you can go as fast as your wallet will allow. Working on this old stuff, this is where, for me, the magic is. I don't know what I'm going to do with this van specifically, but maybe I'll upgrade the ignition. So anyways, I'm planning on getting it running again, going through the gears, making sure second's working because I don't want to rebuild the transmission. Last time I touched one of those transmissions, little top loader 3-speed. That one's designated as for top loader 3-speed. They got another fancy number for it. The spec on that gearbox is a 303, stating it's 3.03 inches between the center of the counter shaft and center of the input shaft. They're not hard to rebuild at all. A lot easier than a T5. I haven't done too many other gearboxes. Done a bunch of motorcycles. Alrighty, let's see what we got. I was looking at the float assembly. I don't know if you can really see it. Got the needle and seat right in there. It was sticking a little bit, but I kind of freed it up. That doesn't mean too much necessarily. It's clean in here, which is really good. Little power enrichment system. Under heavy load, this ball goes, opens up a valve. I finished by blocking this right here. That opens up a valve, sucking more fuel when you're under hard acceleration. Yeah, this carburetor definitely has been rebuilt. You can tell because of the condition of the carburetor and the screws. The screws are really soft material. I can just grab anyone I see. It's easy with the soft metal to damage them, so be careful. Sometimes they get stuck. Alright, this is the body of the carburetor. This is part 2. A little discolored. It's not actually too bad. You're going to have 3 check balls in here. I've got one there. That's a push rod right there. That comes off the accelerator pump, and they said that there's one more, and I'm not sure where that is. So, now I'm expecting 1, 2. I think there's a check ball in here. There's no other places for a check ball, so. And that's also why I have instructions, so I can make sure these all go in the right place. And I gotta check the idle screws. So idle screw, I'm gonna run it in. I count them in half turns. And that's where my setting's gonna be. 1/4, 1/2, 1/4. That's 2 halves, so that's 1, 2 1/2, 3, 3 1/2. And it stops there, I don't force it. 3 1/2 half turns. It's important to know where that one is. He's one of the ones that I will adjust sometimes. You'll get buildup and stuff inside there, and you'll have to open it up more to allow either more air or more fuel. This guy adjusts air. Looking at the seat right there. This one actually was bent at one point. A little bit of a nick. Somebody ran in there too tight. You guys want to be careful with these. I'm actually going to run it in and see if it'll adjust out, but there's a chance I'll have to replace this. You actually adjust right out to here. If you can see, there's a little tiny hole right here. Screw goes in here, hole's right there. Let me show you the screwdriver, the tip of the screwdriver. So heat meters air going in. Magic. That part's coming off, and we're going to go soak it. So, hang tight. That is the teardown. It's going to soak for a couple hours, and we're going to put it all back together and see what we got. Alright, you got everything cleaned up, ready to go. Got the carb kit. It makes noise. Manual says that there's supposed to be a hole right here for a check ball. It's not there. We got 3 spots. That one's just a blind hole. That hole and that hole. Take check balls. They're going to go in there. and they're gonna go in here. So it's going in here. Nah, check balls are done. Make sure everything lines up. Top will go on. That tube that's got to go on here. Check all the nuts and bolts are the same size. They are. Gonna drop them in. Say hi to Pokey. I was wondering where she was because we're fixing to have some rain here in a bit. I'm gonna pause this. I'll come back. I'll show you the results. Oh, my battery's about ready to die, but here we go. Got most of it assembled right now. Adjusted, tightened up. Got the last of my linkage I gotta put on. That'll just take a moment. Everything else is tightened up and going together really, really well. Got the accelerator pump on there. A few more screws, bolts, and a little bit of linkage, and then we'll put her back on. See how she goes. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, feel free to hit me up. Send pictures, let me see your projects, comments, whatever it is. Love to hear from you guys. Thank you guys for watching.